GM Builders, welcome back to another episode of Building on Chain. Today's guest is Abhitej. He's the co-founder of Filament, and today we're going to be talking all about Perps Trading, building on Say. So hi Abhitej, so nice to see you again.
Hello, hi Paloma. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to yap all about filament ups and what I call it, like to call about now internally DeFi for Zoomers.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to get into that in the course of the episode. So let's start off with intros. I know that you're a yapper, but how did you get into web, and also how did you get into building a perp dex?
Awesome. Yes, so I was building startups right in from first year of my college and was very involved. Like loved the intensity that brings, and was building a net tech startup with a couple of seniors. But then an event in life pushed me to take more risk. Back then, it's just like post collapse of 2018, and so I was trying to stay as far as it were possible because I lost a bit of money on like Bitcoin on an exchange that went bust. Then I was introduced to CryptoKitties, and I got really hooked with the idea of like you could have like two kitties that could mate out, and then you have a new kitty that comes in. All is happening on chain. You're trying to find where there's like different characteristics to match your kitty with, so that the offspring has like this unique characteristics, and the more unique it is, the higher value that is for that. And that a kind of like rabbit hole led me to like exploring more about Ethereum. Back then, Ethereum was like probably the only chain which had like so much activity outside of Bitcoin. And then there's like a bunch of post ICO teams. And then very early on got involved with Cosmos because I got this, the idea of Internet of Blockchains was very exciting at the time. And became a contributor, community contributor to the Cosmos ecosystem, and then started Cosmos India early in 2019, which really blew up. Cosmos didn't have a structured community at the point, so you were like as an individual who's just out of college, was I was able to work with very exciting people, like, and that led me to join Persistence, which was a liquid staking focused L1 as a first employee. And then I started like leading everything, whatever I could. Like, so 0 to 1 journey is like running through the walls. That's what my founder back then used to say. But that's one of the superpower I have is like running through the walls. But like the most exciting part for me individually outside of the project was DeFi summer. So I was a kid who had no money, who had to get money considering the circumstances in life. And so I got one ETH from like my co-founder back then, and it's like, okay, experiment on chain, and whatever profits you make you could keep it. And I believe like I at any given day I was looping like 4 to 5 DeFi protocols, and like no matter what, like that food protocol you said, like yam, sushi, and like um every other product that was out there coming, I was like trying everything. And that was like where we started diving deeper. And me and my current co-founder as well, because we have worked since the days of Persistence together. So we used to run a lot of arbitrages. And that was like we were running arbitrages between Trader Joe and Uniswap, and like to like because the pools would have a variance. And we would try and that the MEV bot wouldn't kick in before like we are like doing this arbitrage, and like you would make money like that. You would make money in terms of like staking and running that like staking loops around one chain to another chain. So a lot of like our entire network building exposure was through on-chain activities. And all of that, I felt like that culmination of a lot of that experience led us to work on this thesis that we had, at least at like when we were starting Filament, was that a lot of this trading activity would move on-chain first. And where this thesis came from was that a lot more assets are being actually launched on chain, and they're sort of growing on chain. So Bonk was a great example, which like hadn't listed on a centralized exchange, but organically grew on chain so much because people were keen to buy it and like drive that. And it's like you had more and more such assets coming, launching first on chain and then growing significantly. And then this thesis sort of like played out so well. Now you look at like so many tokens that are launching on pump.fun and like on meme coins. Like it's like saying exchanges are the last ones to get in. and like saying so much of value that is already created on chain. So with this scenario, we also need to move some of these instruments that are like currently mostly uncentralized exchanges on chain. And that's why we felt like creating like almost like a like this trading product which beats the low liquidity constraints. And because we coming from Cosmos ecosystem, understood like the challenges of low liquidity and like kind of like the liquidity fragmentation it causes. So the whole idea was, how do we build a product that solves the problem of expanding markets in low liquidity environments? And sort of like once you have initial liquidity, how you could scale markets and created more interesting dynamics for users to like keep having more exciting markets coming up. So that's the story, like how I got into crypto.
Yeah, amazing. Like I love the YOLO aspect and like finding opportunities, seeing where the value is created and like getting in on all of that early. So thank you so much for sharing. Also, thank you for sharing like the why. Um, and also the thesis behind why you built Filament. You are building a perp dex on Say. So can you share a little bit about the why for Say and like, the opportunity and like value that's there that you're capturing?
Absolutely. So we first started building Filament as a Cosmosm application, and then realized like there are a lot of limitations in terms of building a Cosmosm. One is tooling, the other is like developer support that existed. I very quickly realized that we would want to build in an EVM space because there's like abundance of like tooling and kind of benchmarks that already exist within the EVM space. And we started actually building it on a roll up, which was on top of Injective. That was what our first deployment looked like because we understood an ecosystem we could tap into and started building on the EVM roll up of that. There was little activity that was happening on chain at that time. So we had like, okay, where do we go to figure out where our product works really well on the chain? And we don't end up being in a situation like the only way to expand is launching our own chain. So then like between our testnet one and after that period, we deployed our application on multiple chains. And one thing that we constantly ran into an issue was throughput, because we have an off-chain and on-chain component that are interacting through like a reconciliation engine and hybrid auto matching engine, which is kind of like matching positions both on the order book as well as on the liquidity pool. And the way we want to fill it in was like in a batching process. So there were two things that we were constantly running into. If you were batching, the transactions were becoming really heavy, and that was increasing the cost that you would pay for those transactions. The second thing was, if that was not a concern, it was limiting in terms of the speed. So your time to finality was significantly higher. Experimenting through that, like we saw this like very transparent. We really were excited about Monad's approach to parallelized EVM at the time. And so we read through and like, this is like, okay, exciting thing. But we waited and waited. There was no kind of development on like the Monad side to like say where you could like really go out and build or like see it in actual. It's like, so we had a discussion, there were some dev nets, but at the same time, Say was moving really fast. They launched a testnet, they went on to mainnet. For us, there was a lot of benchmarks. We could see how other applications were acting. And then we're like, okay, this is a great opportunity. This is where our product could complement really well. We said, okay, let's give it a shot. We deployed on Say, and we were able to reach like 70% of the results we expected, like right on our first deployment. And from there, we like improved the product itself to kind of like make it better for like a parallelized EVM environment. And that is where things really started working out on the product side. And from that journey, I feel like Say was our product first approach. We did get a lot of like pushback from a lot of people in our network in terms of like mindshare for Say was on the decline. Kind of like the team is in a right now in like a scrappy place. There were like other concerns about like community. There's not a lot of mindshare. Within like last 3 months, I feel like all those 3 points have the amount of significant like positive impact that has happened within Say is enormous. And that's like today building on Say is almost like building on Solana in like post FTX eras. There are challenges like onboarding from or like other chains, the bridging experience, kind of like the mind share, which I feel like applications like Filament, and I put out a post today just about this, and we're working with everyone in the Say team itself to solve these problems. And those people are so prompt. I have these rant sessions with say team to like say, hey, I feel this needs to be done. And those guys are like so keen to help out and like solve these problems. They're constantly like now jamming with us on how to improve. So I feel like you have to build an ecosystem where there is a huge product potential to eventually like application has to be the one which has to attract users. Application, a unstrong application can change a game for an ecosystem. And for say, I think that's happening now with so many applications, like genuine builders trying to build on say and taking their time, and like it just is going to happen like one application picks up and like the mind share would significantly grow.
Thank you so much for sharing. We've been talking about like perps decks, perps trading. What is perps trading? And how does it work on Filament?
I think so. To break it down in like completely layman terms, perps is futures without an expiry. But like first thinking about what future contracts look like. So perps basically are you make a contract with like a counterparty for a future like it's like saying how our parents would used to make like a promise with us, right? So if you get your homework done by this time, then the output could be this. It could be positive and negative. So if you get the homework done, then it's positive, which I would call profit. And if that doesn't happen, then you are going to have a loss, which is negative. Like in my case, I want to get my playtime. That's sort of the contract we were making with our parents for like something of future outcome. And so similarly, what happens in a case of trading is that you have a BTC price, and then you sign up a contract in a future segment of saying is you are holding for like a future. So you're holding a derivative of this, which is like you can think of like this is a contract for what could be the future price of BTC. Now, as an individual, you could think about that the BTC price is going to go up from here. And so you hold a contract that is with like one potential that you're longing it. You feel the price would go up. And there would be a counterparty of this contract, which is going to say, I feel the BTC price is going to go down from like the current price. And so these both are matched at like that current price, and then you hold that contract. If the price goes upwards, then you are making profit. If the going down, then your counterparty is making profit. So this is happening. This is like a futures contract in simple terms. But what happens in a futures contract? There is an expiry at which this contract closes down. And when this contract closes down, whatever is the price at which it closes is what determines how the positions will be settled, how this contract will be resolved, basically. In case of perps, what happens is you could hold your position into perpetuality. Now you can keep holding your position and maintaining, like as long as you can provide the maintenance of which is basically called margin, as long as you can maintain the kind of cost that is required for this contract, you can hold it to like say perpetuality. And I can say like, I want to long BTC, and think about somebody who long BTC at 3,000 would be in this perpetual, profit scenario, considering of course there are fees components that are really biting at sometimes, but like that's how perps work. That's a simple thing. But I always think about this as like the future promise parent you would make with a parent with like what could be the outcome, long and short. And the scenario now, what we feel like, what you're trying to do at Filament now with perps, we feel like there are a lot of like good perps products that are out there. The key challenge becomes with is like how do you scale like derivative markets, and then that challenge is majorly constrained to liquidity. And so for each new market, you have to propose either you need LPs to come in if you're running an Oracle-based model, or market makers to come, or maker liquidity, which we call, if you're running an order book model. In our case, we wanted to kind of like eliminate some of that dependence on either one parties significantly if you want to grow new markets. And how can you scale markets with your existing liquidity that you have? Or you could think of this way as part of your unused liquidity. And that's why went on to create compartment-based pool, allows it to, so you have a single liquidity source, which are, and at compartments, you are isolating the risk for each market that is supported, very similar to an isolated markets model. But like your compartments can rebalance between themselves based on like how the traders are making a profit or loss, or the need to support a new market. So you could have like a market which has a lot of maker liquidity, and there's a lot of liquidity that's sitting in the pool which is unused. You can actually utilize it to support a new market. And as the maker liquidity grows there, you could like keep expanding markets. So you could like say just with 1 million, you could actually expand into like multiple markets. This has come with like what we felt as users is like a huge constraint, because at times in environments or applications where there was low liquidity, you couldn't close positions, you couldn't like you had like you could only trade with limited markets, and we wanted to solve this problem. But I feel like derivatives journey and what we want to offer to users and building Filament along with community. So there's an interesting thing that we have done is like we have built the entire Filament product in public. And building in public is like you need a lot of courage, and I feel like that courage is like a characteristic. If I hadn't had like a co-founder like Pratyaksh, I wouldn't probably like it would have been hard to dare something like that. But that's the good dynamics you have. It's just like building in public, you're constantly beaten down by a community, like saying this is not working, that is not working. Oh, this team doesn't know how to do it. But like you have to like kind of be patient and listen to the right feedback to cut out true noise. I feel like what we have gone to realize is now what is going to be the future looking like for Filament is that we feel like, which you said, right? Perps is like an almost like esoteric knowledge instrument. A lot of people don't even understand it. And like, so there are very limited kind of like, what do we say, pro traders that are using these products, which are itself limited. So every product is kind of trying to compete for getting these traders on their platform. And then incentives and those kind of like things play like massively into it. What you realize is that there is a large size of on-chain users that just need one thing to be improved. That is, how do they get access to exciting markets? How quickly they can get started with, say, anything like derivatives. So how simple you can make them for like trading their first trade, right? So a thesis that we are running in is we want to reach a stage where like our top of the funnel derivatives product, any user can start trading or kind of like start getting hang of it within 15 seconds. So within 15 seconds of coming and like loading up their wallet, they should be able to take a trade. And that's sort of like our focus is starting to become is how do we cater to these users, which we call as DeFi Zoomers. So there are two kinds of like major users, right? There are DeFi boomers, and I'm not saying boomers in terms of like just the age. It's kind of like saying what their preferences are. DeFi boomers are people who either come with like a large capital already into the on-chain system, or the users that have been on-chain for a while. So they kind of are like very adaptable to like how to get around, how do I bridge, where do I get yield, what kind of systems I want to run. And there are like, so what are these users looking for? These users are looking for yield, so restaking and then like leverage farming and all of these kind of like products are built for them, or even like say larger like traditional perp dexes kind of are for these users. Then you have Zoomers, like DeFi Zoomers. These DeFi Zoomers actually have a smaller ticket size. They're, for some of them, they are first time coming onto chain, but they're looking for something more exciting. So think about like meme coin trading platforms or SocialFi. These are all tools that like DeFi Zoomers would use. Now, we want to create a category with Filament and series of products that we have lined up, which is like saying you take the user that has never used any derivatives to like stage by stage, almost like a game, like level 1, level 2, level 3, to like then trade on like this like pro trading portal, which you, for example, had the courage to like jump in right away, right, with Kunal. But like saying, what if you could just go out and say, I feel like BTC's price is going to go up in like next 1 minute, and you could just click in, you could buy in if it went in just with $1, right? So you could like say, I could take a position with $1. If this BTC price goes up and stays up for 1 minute, I win. and somebody who feels like a winning go and they put in $1, they lose, right? Kind of like make it that simple. Once you start users doing this, kind of like the journey is. So that's why we are saying is like where we are learning, we are trying to build this very intuitive experience, derivatives experience for Zoomers or DeFi Zoomers. So that's how perps on like Filament would work eventually, and like making it more gamified, making it more interactive, sort of like allowing users to have like just the terms in which they interact are much more mobile first, and like those kind of like where we see the next wave of users coming in, like taking the product there and making it more palatable. That's kind of like our North Star right now. How do we get people to get started with derivatives within 15 seconds?
Amazing. And I think I would consider myself a DeFi Zoomer. So I'm probably your target audience and like the gamified experiences, the like simple onboarding. Okay, so Filament has a lot of interesting features. And so I would love if you could share more about Filament Clients, the Memex client that like allows you to trade memes, how that works, and also how like the credits on Filament work.
The goal of each client is to kind of like cater to the users in a way they love it, the way they understand it, based on their expertise. But everything is basically built on the same infrastructure. So it's the same kind of like liquidity layer, same audit book, same tech stack. And so only the front ends are different. So I feel like you could think of this as like you would have an app which is you are using it's like a light mode, and there's like a pro mode and like things like that. So it just is that it's just simplified for you. That's what Filament Clients are. And it's like the other thing that we really feel is the user experience needs to be more specific to the user, and it has to be more curated, and you have to make it like tailor-made, almost like tailor-made experience for a certain set of users. And that's what clients do. The other thing is the incentive mechanism that you require for each user, or what motivates each user to do that activity over and over again, is different. And it's very hard to kind of like impose the same, which is like, I feel like it's very outdated system of imposing the same incentive mechanism on everybody. Or like saying, oh, we run like this fund systems, this is for everyone. No matter like what kind of user you are, what experience you come with. And so clients allow you to create more nuanced incentive mechanism on that particular client. So thinking about just like a simple example, if you were a meme coin community, what you want most is like more people come into your community and the price of that meme coin goes up, which increases the mind share. Now, what if you could incentivize traders who are taking long position on that meme coin? And same way is, what if you, as a trader, you get earned to take a long position? Now, you could run this on Memex today, and that's like what we feel is like where it starts to get very interesting. In terms of what you talked about is Filament Credits. Filament Credits are almost a way to incentivize and involve. So incentivize, we have seen airdrops. There have been numerous airdrops, which are to reward early participants, but often these airdrops get misdirected towards users that are just trying to farm in, or they really aren't there for long term. So a way that we wanted to create was use almost like how you would have credit card points, which is like you do certain transaction, you get those points, which you could redeem immediately for a certain things. That's how like you feel like, oh, this credit card is better than the other one. Credits have a fixed supply. Number one, very similar to any token. Second thing is they have a release schedule. So at every point, like you can't like be spreading more tokens than what you could have like say released. The third thing is they are fungible. So you could create, like what we want to do is create sandbox environments within our early adopters or like early users to kind of create ways how the product could actually becoming more self-sustaining, kind of like more self-governing, and how could like these participants can have more role. And like having these clear kind of definitions also allow us to better shape what could like the utility of token would look like. So you're not just blindly launching a token, which is like saying, oh, it's like a simply utility token, which ends up only being like for pseudo governance. Rather, you could like really have ways how like community can get involved in the future of the product, and you test out this thesis. And only once you have like enough benchmarking, you could create it. That's what Filament credits are. So some of the easy ways we feel like we want to eventually do as soon as we go on to like full out launch is having like say fee rebates for the users that have already earned. So kind of like being early should be rewarded economically immediately. So kind of like saying you have these credits you could utilize to have lower fee tiers than everybody else, than new users coming in.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing like all the experiments and incentives. I know that you also have credits for creators weekly, in addition to people like who trade on the platform. So this next round of questions is going to be like rapid fire. So the first one is, when you're not building, what do you do for fun on and off chain?
I really like to run. So running like just clears my mind. And I love doing that. I love like traveling. So when I'm not building, so I just like love to explore new places. So it just could be like not just always like going out of the city, but like trying out a new restaurant, like new food, new cuisine, cook for friends. I did this as an activity like recently a lot. I would like have people home and cook for them. I feel like that's a very like one of the best gestures I can show to the people, like how much like they matter. Should I do that? So I think so when I'm not building, I love to do this.
Yeah, amazing. I was thinking you were going to mention like making barbecue for your friends, because I know that you hosted like bad kids and like sloths recently. Okay, so what's your Web3 hot take that you could get cancelled for saying?
I feel the hot take is that it's easiest thing to do in crypto is YAP and not ship. And the easiest thing to do in crypto is YAP before the launch. It's the hardest thing to do in crypto is like ship and then take the beating and sort of like have slow churn growth. And I feel like 90% of the projects in crypto either never launch or they have a very underwhelming launch because they just delay this kind of like, so trying to build a brand. I feel like building a brand is like a huge myth in crypto, which is like saying build a brand by just talking, being everywhere. Like, I am completely like opposite of this direction. The only way you can have a long-term growth is you launch something as fast as you could. You have to launch the shittiest product on day one. And then if you're truly a genuine builder, you would iteratively improve your product.
Okay, awesome. So last few questions. What's your best and worst advice you've ever gotten?
I think the best advice I've gotten is have fun within the process. If you're not having the fun, then ultimately either you end up being too drained, or you like just like lose the track of what like the real purpose was. And I feel like it's still like the advice that's the hardest to follow. At most times, it's just like I miss out on following that advice because you get so consumed and so obsessed with getting things done that you ultimately forget about what the word fun means. Kind of have to be having fun, and then more people like around you would have fun. Otherwise, like it's just you are a black hole of energy. The worst advice I've gotten is like get KOLs, get like people talking about you on Twitter, and then like things would work out. I feel that's never the case. Projects that take enough time to really understand and talk to their users, even if they have just 10 users at day one, and if 10 users like are ready to come back over and over again, then that would have in like say 6 months time, you could like make 1000x growth rather than like day one, you just go out and buy some people to talk about you. It works in crypto to some extent, but I just feel that I think so that idea is diluting now very quickly in terms of you could just buy in the mind share and then that sort of dilute. So that I don't believe in that idea.
Okay, I think that I agree also with the like KOL advice. Like everybody is like onto the game now, so it just doesn't like work as well as it probably used to back in the day. So if you had like an opportunity to build something with no restrictions, what would you build and who would you build it with?
Who I have to build with? I feel like I would have 0x NGMI. I'm not sure if you know, is like core contributor to DeFi Llama. Absolutely like the top tier like shipper, I would say. And I don't know even if the DeFi Llama team sleeps within crypto at least. So I'm talking very crypto specific, so there's more context. And then I would choose like Mert to be like the chief ship posting, or like also like somebody who really understands the complexities of like what infrastructure we're building on. So yeah, Mert, and then would choose Stani to think about the product. I feel like he's one of the best product thinkers in the space. So if I have to build, I would be kind of like the operations guy, kind of like um, putting things together, almost like weaving, and like have Stani on the product, 0x and Jimai on the engineering or the shipping side, and Mert on like outwards and kind of building. So these are three people that I would definitely have on my team.
That's like a dream team. Amazing. So the last question I have for you is who is someone you would like to see on the podcast?
I feel like I really would like to see again like 0x and GMI on podcasts, like thinking about how do they really think about the like product iterations. I'm truly fascinated, but very few people really talk about in terms of like how do they go through this process of managing so many project requirements and with such a small team. I've just seen like three people from their team ever, and they are always available, no matter what time of the day you message. And like at the frequency they ship, kind of like making this resource that is the center point for any project. I find it very inspiring. So, and I've never seen like them talk about it. Actually, I've seen everybody else. So I could have said like Mert, or I could send Brian, or like anyone. They all have been on podcasts, but like this like one person I'm really not seen talking on podcasts. So I would really want to see them.
Awesome. So that's like dream guests now for me to see if like at some point of this podcast I can somehow get them to share, and then I think it will be like a whole big thing because like you probably are not the only one who has like questions to ask them. So thank you so much for coming on the episode, Abhitej, and like sharing so many things. I had a lot of fun with you. I Yeah, so I look forward to seeing more from Filament and all the cool experiments you roll out in the next few weeks and months. And thank you to everybody listening.